Okay, hello everyone and welcome to the first Spotlight session of the new year. So for January 2021, the Spotlight session that I'm doing today is focusing on some of the items in our collection which are related to the Civil War. So the Civil War in England, the Civil War that happened in the 17th century between the Royalists and the Parliamentarians, and that culminated in the execution of King Charles I in 1649 and led to the Commonwealth period, where Oliver Cromwell and the Parliamentarians ruled the country for a while until 1660, when King Charles II was returned with the restoration of the monarchy. So we have various books in the collection that deal with the Civil War. Some of them are near contemporary issues, written close to the time when the Civil War happened. We have many more later discussions of the Civil War and the history of the time, but most of what I'm going to show you today are some of the ones that were published around about the time of the war. So the first ones that I'm going to show you, this is part of a set. We have this set in 8 different volumes. It's 4 volumes, each of which has 2 parts. You can see the book itself. They are rather nice, large old books, but they're not in terribly good condition. So we have some cracking on the spine. The covers of almost all of them are detached from the spine. So we have to be a bit careful when we're looking at them, but that doesn't mean that we can't. Let me take the little slips of paper out. So what these books are is, as you can see that the title says, the historical collections containing the principal matters which happened in the periods of the war. So these were published by Rushworth, John Rushworth, and as I say, there are 4 volumes, and they cover in total they cover the period from I haven't made a note of that. That was very silly of me. I apologise for that. But they were published between 1659 and 1701, and the parts which cover the period of the Civil War are parts 3 and 4. So part 3, in 2 volumes, covers the period from the 3rd of November 1640 to the end of 1644. And of course, at the time, the calendar that was being used in the country was different to the calendar that we're using nowadays, for 2 main reasons. But one of them was that New Year fell on the 25th of March rather than on the 1st of January. So when they say the end of 1644, what they are referring to is the 24th of March 1645, as we would describe it in today's calendars. So anyway, the 3rd part goes up to March 1645, and part 4 goes from the 25th of March 1645 to the death of the king in 1648, although by our reckoning that's actually January 1649. So the ones that I've got out to show you are part 4, the parts that cover the latter part of the Civil War and up to the execution of Charles I. So these volumes contain reprints of information that was published, some of it officially and some of it unofficially at the time, together with some kind of remembrances by the editor John Rushworth. Now, John Rushworth was born around about 1612. He lived until 1690, and he was a lawyer and a politician, and he had he supported the Parliamentarians in the war, and he had access to a lot of key information because he covered a number of the key battles as what was known as an embedded journalist. So he was taken along specifically in order to record what was happening. When Charles I was captured, he then began to actually collate all the information that he'd gathered. And he rose quite high. He became personal secretary to Oliver Cromwell, and he was elected as an MP for Berwick, and he was returned to Parliament a few times. By 1660, he was the Secretary of the Council of State. So on the Restoration, when Charles II was brought back to reign, he was reassigned as the Treasury Solicitor, and although he was questioned over his role in the regicide, he claimed innocence and seems to have not ever been kind of prosecuted for any of that. However, he did fall into debt, and he spent the last 6 years of his life in prison. Now, this collection is his major work. This is the major thing that he left behind. Part 1 was published in 1659 and was dedicated to Richard Cromwell. So this was in the year before the restoration of the monarchy. So when he first published the first part of these papers, he dedicated it to Richard Cromwell, but in later editions that dedication was then suppressed. The second part was published in 1680, and parts 3 and 4, which actually deal with the war, were published after Rushworth had died. So on the title page we have by John Rushworth, late of Lincoln's Inn, Esquire. This is, as it says, fitted for the press in his lifetime, but this is to indicate that it was actually published after his death. It's also important that he, in very large letters, includes on the title page, impartially related. So this is him very much setting out that he's reporting facts rather than reporting opinions or his own personal feelings about things. However, when these papers were published, they were attacked by the Royalists for their partiality and some inaccuracies. And as the Database of National Biography puts it, his partiality, while he claims that he is impartial, his partiality reveals itself mainly in the selections of the documents that were chosen for republication. So for the first part of the documents that he published, he had direct access to original documents, but for the later parts he was mostly republishing things that had already been published by others. So he was acting more as an editor than anything really when putting these together. However, these do gather together a lot of the information that was current, that was being published at the time in the period just after the Civil War. And so they are a relatively contemporaneous account of the war. And they are rather lovely books. So they're printed in this 17th century style. They include little notes in the margins to help you to navigate the books and to work out where you are and what period you're looking at and what documents they are that are being reproduced here. So we have the full set of these and some of the volumes we've got 2 copies of. They are available, they can be searched and used if anyone is interested, and there's an awful lot of information in here presented as factual. So it's a vaguely, sort of closely contemporary account presented as unbiased. So it's quite an interesting set.